Hey guys, Woods Farm here, just back working on the Kubelwagen. So last I left, I had spent time working on the getting the fenders to the right shape and kind of figuring out exactly where they were going to be mounted. I also finally got my bead roller up and running and was able to do a couple test panels, including the kind of rocker panel, lower side panel there. I've got that sorted out. So now I just got to move back to these rear fenders and the floor for the back seat and the cargo area. I've been talking about doing this for a while, and I'm going to finally get to it in the next couple of days. So this is the spot that's really giving me trouble. I don't really have a clear picture of how to do this. I've come to the realization that no matter how I kind of finish it off, I'm not really going to be 100% satisfied with it. I mean, that's partially because this doesn't match the actual Kubelwagen that closely. A Kubelwagen doesn't have this pillar. See, there's that support pillar there. And the way the back fender is kind of set up, it's just a little different. It's kind of flatter back here, and it kind of tapers differently. I don't know, it's hard to explain. You know, based on the resources I have, this is what I've come up with, and now that I'm here, I just have to deal with closing it all off. Okay, just so you have something for reference, this is kind of the back seat area of the Kubel. You see, I've got this kind of support that's, you know, 8 or 10 inches out. I still set it up with this cross piece, but you can see how this is a lot different. The way that the fender is kind of surrounded here and kind of tapers over. This kind of thing is sort of the actual frame. So it kind of sweeps in a bit and then comes back. And then you have kind of this stamped sort of framework here that's kind of supports the part of the side pillar, and you can see the ribbing for the sheet metal body panel. So I need to close my fender in somehow and get this floor kind of laid down, but you can see how far I am from the actual Kubel. So right now the first step is I got to deal with this gap here, and I'm going to use this as an opportunity to put in kind of a piece of structural material, probably like 3/4 angle, and the fender is going to get welded to that, and then that's going to get tied into the actual framework. So I'm going to work on that, and then if you come underneath here, you see that arch, that gap there, that's going to get closed in. Okay, so there's a cardboard pattern that I've just made to create a piece that's going to close off that edge there. And that needs to get closed off because this is on the inside of the vehicle, so that lower part of the fender there has to get cut off from the outside of the vehicle. Okay, so I've got the rear fender mounted in place. I just had to make a framework for the rear. And you can see it's just a piece of angle, and then I tied it into the fender, and then it goes across and it's welded into the main frame. And this, you kind of need this here because the panel needs, at the bottom, needs something to get attached to. And then there's a little triangular brace that gets put in later. The height of the rear fender, I don't know, it might be about 1 inch too low. Give or take. It kind of depends on how that triangular brace kind of fits in there, but it's close, and it's easy enough to just trim that a little shorter if I have to. And on the front, I've got a piece of angle here. Again, it's tied into the main frame, comes across, and then I have this piece of plate here, just kind of ties it to this the rear kind of door pillar, and it comes across and ties it all together. Okay, here's the inside corner of the fender. Just wanted to show you that I had to cut away that lip there, and just to give access to that plate that goes over the rear axle. It's kind of the strut, and the torsion suspension kind of gets all attached by that plate there. And if I ever have to remove it to do maintenance, I needed to make sure I could pull it off. As it stands, it looks a little tight, but at least you can get access to those bolts. Pretty sure the plate will slide off. These are the kind of things you have to think about. Easy enough to start welding things together, but then down the road you realize you have to repair something, and you have the frames welded across something that you can't get access to or whatever, so you need to kind of always be looking ahead. Okay, so I just decided for fun to throw a cardboard panel on there, and it's really starting to pop. You can kind of see the scale and dimensions of the vehicle now. The fenders turned out pretty good. I'm glad I went with a larger size. I had debated on getting the size down. These were the 36 inch by 13, and there was you could get a 32 inch. But after I trimmed the ends of them and cut them down to the right shape, they ended up pretty much being bang on. So had I gone with the smaller ones, I probably would have been in trouble. You can see the tire looks a little small. That's a 14-inch rim, pretty small tire. Hopefully next year or the year after, I'm going to definitely upgrade to some 15-inch rims, but that's just a money issue. For now, I'm more concerned about getting it on the road. So, like I said, pretty happy with the fender layout and how it worked. At this point, I'm generally going with a Kubel that was built after 1940, so I'm going to try to work in the late model features into my vehicle. One of the things you notice on the later model Kubels is the fenders, they extended them down. Earlier Kubels, the fender just cut right off at the end of the body panel, which is kind of flush with the back of the car and the bumper, right? The fender only came down that far. Later models, they extended them down several inches and they added a little triangular brace. So I'm going with the later model, and I'm going to try to incorporate a lot of the late model design features into my vehicle. Okay, so there's the driver's side rear fender mounted. For whatever reason, I took measurements like crazy trying to figure out what was going on, but it's about a 1/2 inch higher. I don't think it's higher. I just think the distance from that upper bar down is just a little bit smaller on this side. Don't know why. At this point, not really concerned. And that's what the passenger side looks like from the inside. There's that little piece of sheet metal to kind of seal it off from the outside. And you can see there's the area where the floor is going to go for the back seat and the cargo area. I think I'm going to incorporate a little access panel which will give you access to the starter and the bell housing. The Kubelwagen had an access panel, I believe, so I'm going to do the same thing. So there's the panel for the back seat, and that's the hatch. There's 2 hatches over top of the fitting for the brake lines. And this is going to let you get access to other stuff. The wiring harness comes through here, things like that. So it's just handy. And there's just a little plate that goes over top, a couple of bolts, and the plate bolts down flush, just like that. And this will all be hidden under the back seat. So I think it's a good addition. Okay, not sure where I left off, but here's the back cargo area floor and the floor for the back seat. It's all roughed in. So I did go ahead and make two little hatches, which if you pull off the cover, it gives you easy access to the brake line fittings. There's steel brake line that goes to flex hose, and there's also a T fitting. And I realized pretty difficult to get to that stuff for maintenance. So I just went ahead and put these little hatches in, and they're going to be hidden underneath the back seat, so no big deal. And then the original Kubel actually had an access hatch in the back cargo area similar to this. And that gives you access to kind of the upper bell housing if you want to do service to the starter or adjust the linkage for the clutch, and just to get to the top bell housing bolts, probably a lot easier through that hatch. In my last video, somebody asked me about the ribbing. When it came to the engine bay and the back seat, I didn't rib any of the panels just to save time. But all the exterior panels, the doors, the quarter panels are all going to have the proper Kubelwagen ribbing to make it look correct. So yeah, a lot of work I got done in the last couple of days. These fenders are mounted. I was hoping to maybe get to some painting this afternoon or tomorrow morning. We're in some warmer weather right now. It's actually spiked up to like 3 or 4 degrees above zero, and with the heaters going in the garage, I actually felt like I might get a chance to do some painting, but it looks like probably not going to be. I still have to finish this, close off this panel here, but what needs to happen is this whole area needs to get painted, and I'm probably going to try to paint these panels, the floor panels, before I weld them down. You know, I might not probably leave like a 1/4 of an inch around the edge where the tack welds are going to go, or anywhere I'm going to put plug welds or anything. But for the most part, I want to try to paint as much of the underside, and then I got to weld it down, clean it up, and then paint all this. There's certain parts, particularly like the inside here and this panel here. That's all going to be really difficult to paint once the skins go on. So I want to try to paint that before I start getting into that work, but the real tricky thing is just finding warm enough days right now, late February. We are coming into spring, and hopefully in March we're going to get those warmer days. But my goal right now is to have this thing pretty much roughed out and have a paint job by the beginning of May. So I think the fabrication part of it, I'm on track. The only thing that's going to really throw me off is the painting, which is an unknown to me. I don't have the experience, so I still have to do a lot of research. And again, the weather is really going to be the problem. I have to wait for those warmer days. So we will see. But I think, yeah, the next time I'm out here, if it's warm, I'm going to start doing some of those painting jobs. If not, there's patterning to be done. I need to make cardboard patterns of all the panels. I got to put in an order to metal supermarkets for some sheet metal, some 20 gauge and some 18 gauge. I'm probably going to need at least 3 more 4x8 sheets of various gauges to finish it off. So I got to order that. And I got to start thinking about these seats. The front seats need to be fabricated out of tubular steel. So that's another job I can start working on pretty soon. It looks like now that the back engine bay is almost complete, once I get that sorted out, I might actually be able to revisit the wiring. The main wiring harness goes through there and comes up to the front. So I might actually be able to start running some wire for the tail lights and stuff like that. Just get that all roughed in. Of course, there's a heck of a lot of detail work to be done. Going to be coming up soon on working on things like the heavy duty bracket. There's a bracket that goes on the side there that supports the windshield. I have to pull out the old thing windshield and look at how they designed that. I'm going to kind of try to mimic what they did for the Kubelwagen windshield. So those are all things that need to get done. And yeah, I bought some hardware to actually bolt that fender on. So I'll be doing that soon. Okay, so I'm just painting the underside of these rear floor panels. These are the panels that make up the back cargo area and the back seat. Just painting the underside with a high gloss rust paint. Give it a little bit of protection. I put some tape around the edges where I'm going to weld, and hopefully I've got enough of a buffer there that it's not too much of the paint's going to burn off. I'm just experimenting with primer here. I'm just putting on some just standard automotive primer. You can see how it dries in these temperatures. This is kind of a non-critical area, so it's well above zero in the garage, so hopefully this paint will adhere. I'm getting to the point where I'm going to have to paint some of these inner areas. I don't know if I'm just going to do like a matte black in spots that you don't really see, and then primer in other areas and wait till I do the main paint job. But the problem is some of these areas are really not going to be accessible once I put on the body panels, so I just have to paint them now. Okay, so I finished welding down the floor panels for the cargo area and the back seat, and I decided to go ahead and just mock up what the back seat's kind of going to look like with a couple pieces of plywood. There's a slight discrepancy in the height from one side to the other, unfortunately. I took some measurements. I feel like it's just that first edge. It's welded a little high on one side and a little low on the other side, so it's not quite level. I might go back and fix that, I'm not sure. But when you get the plywood in there, you can kind of see. That's a good idea how the back seat kind of plays out. Okay, so I'm doing a lot of patterning now. Just working on getting the ribs in the correct position. Based on everything I can figure and accounting for the scale difference, the size difference between the Thing, my body that I built for a Thing chassis, and a Kubelwagen, I'm thinking the ribs are roughly 3.5 inches apart. I figured that out based on the door and how evenly spaced they look on the door, and then just measuring what my door is. So things don't perfectly line up on the front end or the back. It's kind of that, I don't know if you can see it, but if you look at the back panel, the second rib down is very close to the top of the fender. And that sort of translates to the front as well. Okay guys, I'm going to wrap this video up here. Yeah, a couple more videos, probably 2 or 3 more weeks of work. I'm putting out a video roughly every week. I should have the majority of these body panels finished. Definitely all 4 fenders mounted and the main side panels. And then I'll probably move on to the top decking. And the last things I'll do will be the doors, including the rear engine hatch door and the cargo compartment door. I think those will be the last things I do. And then I'll need to move on to the front seat and actually start thinking about maybe the windshield. There's a lot of little detail things that need to get done as well. I still have to order that custom gas tank. and get that installed. And probably one of the last things I'll work on is the actual hood. I need to install the gas tank first, mostly because there's bracketry that needs to get fabricated. Way easier to do that with the hood off. But things are coming along on schedule. Anyways, definitely like, subscribe, leave a comment below if you have any questions. As always, thanks for watching.